I'm sitting with a great family now. And I'm going to do something a little different right now.
Oh, God.
I'm going to do something a little different.
Praise.
No, it's going to be good. You're going to love it. You're going to love it.
Okay.
You're really going to love it.
Okay.
I promise you. This family has been so powerfully effective in impacting me on what family's supposed to be like.
Oh.
I've watched them throughout the decades, not just years. Throughout the decades, I've watched them. And I've seen their unity, how they love each other, how they raise their children, and how now they're pastoring a wonderful church right here in Nashville called Nashville Light. Light. Called Nashville Light. So I want to introduce to everybody Pastor Alvin Love, Pastor CeCe Love, and Pastor Ashley Love.
Yes, sir.
Yes, give me my title too.
You said that word.
This is really, I've never sat with all of you on TBN. I've only sat with Sister on TBN, but this is totally unique and totally different. This is the true essence of who the love is. Alvin III, he's not here.
Right.
But this is the true essence of what the Love family represents and who you are. You are a family that is a love family. Y'all in love.
Yes, we're in love.
Watch out. Y'all are in love. And it shows. Yeah. Tell me about meeting this wonderful, bright-toothed woman. She's got a $20 smile. And she gave it to her daughter. Tell me about meeting this woman.
Well, it started back in 1982, 3. Yeah.
Wow.
We were married 32 years next month.
What?
Yes. I met her when she was singing at PTL, and I met her through her brother. And he took me down to PTL down in Charlotte. We met, then she came back to Detroit for a break, her and BB, and then we went back to Charlotte. And then when we went back the second time, that's when I told her, next year we're going to be married. And she looked at me, she said, "Oh, really?" I said,
"Oh, really?"
And next June, we were married.
What you said.
Yeah.
And that transformed her entire life. The eldest of the 3 girls.
Right.
And there were 7 boys and then 3 girls, and she's the beginning of the females in the Winans family.
Right. We go through 8 fathers.
8 of them. Your father and your
More
brothers.
than enough, and then I have 7 brothers who thought they were my fathers.
Yes, and overprotective to a son.
Oh,
yes.
my God.
Well, tell me, what was the courtship like?
What was the courtship? It was awesome. He was very nice. My brothers weren't very nice. But he stood. Even at the wedding, Ronald had an attitude. You know, I was like...
And he's the one who introduced me to it.
And when they started clowning on him, I was like, you know what, if y'all run away, y'all are going to get it. But we had a good time. You know, I had a few people in my life that had to say, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Because, you know, when you come from a family that big, everybody's not going to say this is awesome. Yeah. My grandmother, Mother Housey.
Yep. Laura.
My dad, my mom, and Pastor Stacks. And I heard Karen earlier, but Pastor Stacks told me, he said, CeCe, he's a good man. He loves God more than he loves you.
Wow.
And when he said that, I was like, yes!
So 32 years.
Yeah.
And I used to watch CeCe when she was in concert. And we used to have a running joke.
What's that? Get up to date.
As soon as this concert's over, it's going to be BB. CeCe gone.
I'm gone.
She's finding a red eye. She's going home to her husband.
That's right.
And when she started having kids, going home to kids. And you have been quintessential Priscilla Love, more so than CeCe.
Oh, yeah.
Than CeCe Winans.
Definitely.
How did you juggle that?
How did I juggle that? Well, I have to thank God for my parents. I have to thank God for, Dad. You know, he always told us if you didn't keep things straight, you was going to go down like the Titanic.
That's a pop, yeah.
So we always understood that my life off stage was way more important than my life on stage. Your private worship propels your public worship, and I'm called to be a wife and a mother first, and God never calls you to save the world and lose your own family. And so, yeah. So the teachings of my mom, I had a great example of a mother. I mean, she had 10 children. Yeah. My God. Praise the Lord.
Yes, she is.
But I can't thank God enough for her and the old mothers of the church. They taught us the importance of being a wife, the importance of being a mother, and I knew that had to be first. And if God wanted me to sing for the nations, then my husband would have to support me 200%.
Yeah.
And he has 200%. He has never, ever tried to hinder or stop. He's been my #1 fan. It's hilarious. He's still my #1 fan. Even before we came out, he's like, "Babe, you should have sang. You should have sang." I'm like, "No, I'm not singing today." But he's just a nice person. He's been my best friend for 32 years.
Yeah, and that's the key.
Nice.
That's the key. That's why I wanted to do it a little differently, and I didn't want to talk to CeCe Winans-Love. I wanted to talk to the Love family, because this is first and foremost. You being the head of Nashville Life, tell me about how the ministry started.
Ooh, wow, that takes a few minutes. But it started... Well, okay, my son Alva's not here, but it started through my son in Australia. He has an encounter with God. He comes back. When back, his friends wanted to see what happened. Tell me about it. He said, it's much easier for me to bring what I've experienced back here. So he brought our friends Brahmandai Manasama from Melbourne, Australia, back to Nashville. And we had 5 people at our house for a week-long, really like a revival. And they were trained for 1 week. So much so that they came back 3 months later and did it again at our house. This time we had 80 people at our house.
Wow.
Had to move all of our furniture out for a whole week. Again, totally transformed. And so after the second one, Diane looked at the crowd and says, "This is your church."
Because you were prophesied.
Yeah, well, prophesied 20 years ago that I was going to pastor. But I didn't pay much attention to that. I'm serious, Donnie, because I didn't want to be a pastor. I mean, I was always in the background, as you know.
Right.
And I was fine in the background. I did not want to be out front. And the Lord said, no. He said, you're going to come out of your comfort zone, and I'm going to put you in front.
He prophesied that too.
Yeah, you sure did.
You
wanted...
I wanted permission.
I forgot about that.
But that is all that you all have been about, is ministry.
Ministry.
And seeing people's lives transform. Ministry is not an odd thing in family, and we need to bring it back to families. Ministry is a family thing.
That's what we tell it.
It's not just one person out of the family. It's a family thing.
That's true.
And that's where Ashley comes in.
Yes. Let me say this before she comes in, because years ago, Alvin got the prophecy that he'd be a pastor, and I screamed out, "Oh, no!"
At church.
Nothing against ministry. We just didn't feel, I thought I was safe because he was a person behind the scene and he was fine with it. But God had other plans. And so when the prophecies kept coming and we started stirring in our spirits, we were just praying. And so I told the kids, I said, "Alvin and Ashley, we just want you to know that we think the Lord is calling us to pastor." They looked at us, they were like, "Well, that's good, but we're not coming to your church." That's what I get for raising them to say what they really speak. What they really feel. I say, speak what they really feel. And I looked at him. I said, if God has called us, He'll call you too.
That's right.
If He's called us, He'll make it known. And when I tell you they think it's their church, they tell us what to do. So it's amazing that God really does. He will call the whole family.
But that's the key, because the whole represents the generations. That's right. Not just the generation, the generations. And if you have a whole family in ministry, then you can reach the whole gambit of man. You can reach the elders to the youngest, from all genres, from others. That's what it is. And you all are so multicultural that it's remarkable. How do you handle the level of ministry that God's thrust you into, because you're a key part of this?
Yeah. Well, like she said at first, I was like, no way, I don't think this is a good idea. I don't think that was the Lord. No, I definitely had to personally seek the Lord just for Him to do a work in my own heart. learned, because at first it was just something that I felt like it was my parents that they called to, and I didn't have a choice. It was like, okay, this is happening. But it was great because so many of the people involved when our church started were our friends from college, so it was easy for it to just kind of naturally turn into this like, well, we're all already, and I think that played a big part in it. But also, I had been praying all the time the church started for the Lord to make His desires my desires, because I knew I wanted to please God and I wanted to do His will, but I didn't want it to be this fight. I wanted it to be like, okay, God, I want to do this. So I had to pray and say, Lord, change my desires. If my desires aren't lining up with yours, then change your desires, my desires. And it seemed like overnight, all of a sudden, I was like, why do I want to minister? Like, why do I want to preach? Like, where did this come from? And it was like the Lord reminded me, you prayed for my desires to become your desires so that you weren't struggling or fighting me in this. And it's been great. It's actually been a joy, and it's what like my greatest desire is to build the kingdom of God, and it's that I get to do with my parents.
I'm going to ask you right now to look into that camera and talk to your generation about this relationship with Jesus. What would you tell them?
So much to say. Jesus is the best thing that happened to you. Whatever you're looking for to fill that void, you're only going to find it in Jesus. And the sooner you surrender, the quicker you'll have peace, the more fulfilled you'll be. You'll know your purpose. Jesus is everything. And if you just ask Him to do in your heart what I did, I promise you He'll do the same. Say, Lord, I want to surrender to you. I want to give my life to your will. He will give you the desire so that it's not something that you're grudgingly doing. Yeah. So just say yes. The sooner you say yes, the better your life's going to be. Yeah. So.
Just like with Kiara and the Sheards, your generation called the millennials, and they're doing so many different reports talking about how the millennials are leaving the church and leaving religion, and they don't want God, and it's antiquated, but you're proving just the opposite. You're proving that ministry, and besides ministry, Jesus Christ is the real fulfillment of your life, and it's not based on how old you are or how young you are. It's across the board. Jesus Christ is the answer. So when I hear you, and I'm not going to cry, when I hear you,
thank you, Jesus.
when I hear you talking to your generation, and I know that it's coming from the depth of who you are, that these aren't just pretend or made up words. This is really what you live for. It is for the generations, because there are many millennials out here today, and they need to know that this is not just something for a certain sect of people.
That's right.
This Jesus Christ will transform every one of our lives and give us purpose and hope. Really life.
Yeah.
This is true life.
It's a life.
Yes, it is.
It's a good life. Living for Jesus is a good life. It's the best life.
In the words of CeCe Winans when she's on stage, if you don't know the Lord, you need to get to know the Lord.
That's right.
And every time, if you don't know the Lord, you need to get to know the Lord.
That's right.
He's worth knowing. And if you're watching out there, I pray that at the end of this broadcast, your life will be transformed.
Yeah.
And that you would go harvest your family, heal your family, love your family. Give it up for the love family.